In 2016, climate change delivered record temperatures around the world, with the average now higher than at any time in over 100,000 years. The science has never been clearer. Carbon emissions from human activity are at the root cause of this.
We're heading toward a world that's 4 to 5 degrees warmer. And we know that anything above 2 degrees is just going to be unsafe for human civilization.
In order to understand the challenge we face, I'd first like to know what my contribution is to our changing climate. I turned to environmental scientist Dr. Cara Augustenberg.
Oh, good. I was going to say there's no graceful way to do this.
Cara promised me a memorable representation of my own carbon footprint.
Look. I feel like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz.
So, Cara, tell me, first of all, what is a carbon footprint?
A carbon footprint is all of the carbon dioxide that we as individuals emit into the atmosphere through our day-to-day activities. So that includes our heating of our homes and how we power our homes, our transport system, so how we get to work or school, and also the food we eat. So all of this carbon dioxide, it lasts in the atmosphere for hundreds of years. And this is the legacy or the footprint that we leave as a result of our actions.
I'm starting to get the feeling that I'm not as innocent in this whole thing as I would have hoped.
The average person in Ireland emits about 11 tons of carbon dioxide a year.
Cara explains that the volume of hot air in this balloon is equivalent to the amount of CO2 I'm responsible for every 3 months.
So we need about 4 of these balloons to represent how much carbon dioxide you emit on an annual basis.
And the target is to have less than 1 of these?
That's it, yeah.
And I have about 4?
4. We have a lot of work to do.
Climate change is here. In this episode, I want to explore the realities of living a climate-friendly lifestyle. I was shocked to discover that my annual carbon emissions would fill 4 hot air balloons, more than 7 times what's considered sustainable. And collectively in Ireland, we produce almost 60 million tonnes of carbon dioxide each year. Like any right-minded person, I'd like to reduce my contribution to the problem. But what does it really mean to live a sustainable lifestyle? Driving less, flying less, walking more, being smart about how I use energy, and being wiser about my food choices, like eating less red meat and dairy. By making better personal choices, I can make a significant impact on my carbon footprint and reduce it by almost half. But frustratingly, that's not nearly enough. Like many people in Ireland, I rent my home, so I can't upgrade the insulation. Renewable district heating isn't available to me, so I rely on gas to stay warm at night. And inefficient public transport means I'm dependent on my car to get to work. What frustrates me is that for those of us who live normal, everyday lives, a large portion of our unsustainable carbon footprint seems out of our control, no matter what positive personal choices we make. Cloughjordan Eco-Village in Tipperary is a community of like-minded people who have come together with the goal of achieving sustainability. But how are they performing?
We have the lowest ecological footprint ever measured in Ireland, not quite at the level of sustainability yet, but we're moving towards that. And how do we get that? Number 1 is that we heat all our homes with no carbon emissions. Number 2, we have our community farm, so much of our food comes directly from the farm. It doesn't come from the ends of the earth. There are no carbon miles involved in it. Number 3, we build our houses to very high standards of insulation and of heat retention, so we don't waste energy, as so many Irish houses do. There are 2 boilers here that heat all the hot water that's then sent through all these pipes to the 55 houses that we have.
And then how do you fuel all of this?
Well, it's the only district heating system in Ireland that's fuelled entirely by renewable sources of energy. We use the waste wood chip from a wood factory, so this is heated from wood chip.
So then to make it climate friendly, does that end up being quite expensive for you guys?
It still is much cheaper than heating the house that I used to live in Dublin, that was 100 years old, and that was never as comfortable as my current house, where I have a cosy house 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all year round.
Carpooling and educational workshops are other ways in which Cloughjordan works to promote sustainability. The village even has its own wood-fired bakery, helping to lessen its food-related footprint. In terms of carbon sustainability, is this a carbon-friendly way to bake and way to make food?
Well, absolutely. First of all, localised. And baking locally for your local area. Like there's bread made up in Donegal, shipped down off to Australia. Most of the bread that's sold in Ireland is made over, or an awful lot of it, over in Germany. Like shipping food around the world, it doesn't work, you know. And all our bread that we would only be eating like this bread here. And we work with our farm, so we would get all our vegetables from there. It's not only about our footprint, but empowering others to be able to do that across Ireland, you know.
Could we largely sustain Ireland within reason from what we have here?
Like there used to be bakeries in every town. And the idea would be to get a bakery back in every village in Ireland.
While members of the Cloughjordan community celebrate their rich and varied lifestyles, they would admit that a sustainable community like theirs is not always plain sailing.
It absolutely has its challenges, and there isn't anyone here who would say otherwise, but the benefits far outweigh the challenges. And I suppose most people here, when you actually sit down and weigh everything up, they're hugely in favour of this. Has been an amazing experience, is an amazing experience.
To do this or to live more sustainably, people feel like they have to give up a lot. So do you feel like you've given up to be here?
Absolutely not. No, I think from the day we've got here, it's just been an amazing adventure. It's like a learning curve. It's a very steep learning curve at times, but I would say what I've gained is there's absolutely, don't feel like I've lost anything, but I've gained a huge knowledge.
And on a very practical level, can you take what you've done here and move it to an urban community in the middle of Dublin? Can you move it elsewhere? Can this be done?
Well, that's the basic question. I am convinced, yes. Why can't every housing estate have a district heating system fuelled by renewable energy? Of course it can. There's no reason why most communities in Ireland can't have, through allotment, etc., something like our community farm. In fact, Ireland is the worst country in the European Union in terms of the production of its own fruit and vegetables. We import most of our fruit and vegetables. Why we can't grow more of our own, become more resilient, and have far better quality food, I don't know.
Leaving Cloughjordan, I find myself inspired by the success of the community's efforts. They're demonstrating that it's possible to reduce emissions by tackling the key areas of home heating, food, transport and power. But what's stopping this from being the norm across the country? I asked my personal climate change mentor, Dr. Cara Augustenberg.
What we need are big system changes, so we need to really look at our public transport systems, our food systems and our energy systems.
Well then, regarding that transport system, how can we make that more sustainable?
Right now we spend less than 1% of our transport budget on what they call sustainable transport, so cycling and walking and that kind of infrastructure. And what we need to do is start moving money away from roads and into things like public transport and cycling and walking, which we're not doing right now. We need to get planning right. So at the moment, we're not building apartments that are family friendly in the city, that are easy to commute by public transportation in. We need to start looking at building up instead of out.
So then, Cara, tell me, how do we make our power and our heating more sustainable?
We need to get off of our dependency on fossil fuel imports. And we can do that really easily because we have all of this
untapped energy out there in the form of wind and solar that we can harness here in Ireland. So we could power millions of homes just by putting an array of wind turbines offshore. Right now we focus on these big grid systems that are developer-led with no incentives or opportunities for local communities. So what we really need to do is focus on community ownership and smaller scale distribution of energy systems and let communities decide what kind of energy do they want.
And then is there much of an appetite in Ireland for this new community-based power system?
There are communities all over Ireland that are really going for this and really want to lead the way and own their own power, but our government and our policy decisions are making that very hard.
Cara had given me a lot of hope that system-wide changes were technically possible if the will was there to push them through. So I wanted to see for myself if all this could be made a reality. To do this, I travelled to Freiburg in Germany, a city a little larger than Cork. It's reputedly one of the most sustainable cities in the world. I met with Irish expat Sean Carroll, who works for an environmental NGO at the cutting edge of helping cities to reduce their carbon footprint.
Freiburg is at the forefront of renewable energy, and Germany, of course, is at the forefront of renewable energy within Europe. So the city that we're in is one of the greenest in the country.
What brought you then to Freiburg in the first place?
Well, I was studying in Dublin. I'd finished university and I was looking for some opportunities. So I was originally contracted for a 6-month internship period in Freiburg, and now I've been here for 5 years. So yeah, it kind of, it was a lot longer than I intended, but I'm very happy here. It's a really nice place to be.
So tell me about ICLE then, who you work for.
So ICLE is a network of cities. We work with cities all across the globe. We have our European Secretariat here in Freiburg, and what we do is we help cities to develop in terms of sustainability. More and more people live in cities. This is only going to increase, so cities are really ground zero for all of these challenges. If we want to address climate change, it needs to be done in cities. Improving environmental sustainability, improving cities' resilience, even helping to adapt cities to the impacts of climate change, this is where we can have the biggest benefit in terms of improving people's quality of life. In terms of waste management, waste separation, ensuring that there's proper recycling, renewable energy, Freiburg is at the forefront. And also, I think for things like public transport, things like cycling, sustainable mobility, Freiburg just has such a good reputation.
So do you think it's something that's almost second nature then to people here? It's not like you have to think to be sustainable, you just are.
They take a holistic view of sustainability. So they don't just become an expert in one field, they try to apply sustainable principles to every field. And I think that this really comes across in how people live their life.
Sean paints an idyllic picture of Freiburg, one I have to see for myself. But first I want to find out what had been the driving force behind this push for sustainability. I met Dr. Klaus von Zahn in the Old Town.
It started with the people in the 1970s. It was not an idea of the government to say, hey, we want to become an environmental city or a sustainable city. It started with a protest against a nuclear power plant. And from this against movement, it became this environmental movement, not to say what we don't want, but to say what do we want.
So then tell me, what makes it so livable?
You have less pollution in the air, you have less pollution in the water, you have less noise.
And this makes Freiburg the envy of Germany.
People say there are 2 types of Germans. The one are living in Freiburg and the other ones want to live in Freiburg. So
it's well known throughout the country.
It's well known, yeah.
Perfect. To realise their ambition for a sustainable and livable city, the people recognised they needed system-wide changes. Evidence of this can be seen in their transport network.
More than 80% of the inhabitants of Freiburg are living not far away than 500 meters from the next tram stop. And this is one very important point because When you want to have an attractive public transport system, it has to be available. A public transport system like we have it nowadays exists since 1901, and today we have 5 lines with a length of around about 40 kilometers. So you can see it here. We have one tram after the other. We have 1,200 crossings at this point every day. And well, when you miss one, the next one will come soon, and this is important. In a streetcar like we have them, when it's completely full, we have 260 persons. And well, when you keep in mind that you have 1.3 persons in a car, the cars do not need only streets, they need parking places, 10 square meters every car. And when you have less cars, you need not so much space for streets and parking places. And you win space for living, for parks, for playgrounds, for trees, and so on.
What's noticeable is the cyclists. They're everywhere. It seems like more than half the city is on 2 wheels.
About 28–30% of mobility is done by bicycles, yeah? And 22 or 25% by public transportation. Many things you have to do can be done by your feet, yeah?
It's in the planning and building of new districts that Freiburg's commitments to carbon reductions are most strikingly demonstrated. Expansion of the city is permitted only when public transport, district heating, pavements and cycle paths are first in place.
Freiburg is one of the fastest growing cities in Germany. And when new residential areas are planned, you plan not only housings, but you plan the mobility. In the new residential areas, we do not have only living, but we'll always have working places, yeah, shops and bureaus and so on.
In the suburb of Vauban, many of the housing complexes are co-ops, built and maintained by homeowners. Each complex must show architectural diversity and a commitment to passive house standards of energy efficiency. Cars are only allowed into residential zones to pick up and drop off and must be parked on the outskirts. This leaves acres of undisturbed natural landscape right on the residents' doorsteps. I was amazed to discover that around half of German renewable energy is owned by communities of ordinary people, not utility companies. The University Library, known locally as the Death Star, as well as shopping centres, office blocks, factories and other public buildings, all use solar power to save substantial money on their energy costs. Even private houses contribute to Freiburg's impressive array of renewable energy sources.
You can even earn money through embracing renewable energy. For example, in Freiburg, we have passive houses, which means that houses that don't generate any CO2. But you also then have plus energy houses, and these are houses that have photovoltaic or solar panels on their roofs, and they can actually generate more energy than they can consume. And if this is the case, this energy can feed back into the grid, and the occupant of the house actually earns money. And I think there's a big push to try and get people to change from being energy consumers to energy creators.
Homes that create more energy than they consume can earn up to €6,000 per year for the householders. The city-owned part of Freiburg's power supply is not just environmentally friendly. Its profits fund many other services, like their first-rate public transport system. On the edge of the city is Eichelbuch, Freiburg's most unusual energy plant.
So this was formerly a landfill site up until 2005 when it was converted to produce renewable energy. And now it produces wind, solar and methane from waste itself.
In the city below, steam was rising from the combined heat and power plants, where the gas from the landfill was mixed with the methane generated from household waste. Local, sustainable food is also on the menu. Markets sell an ever-expanding range of locally grown foods, and thousands of garden allotments and urban farms further ensure that food doesn't have far to travel before it reaches the table.
I think it is a model for other cities and countries in the world. People from China, from Korea, from Japan, from America coming here and looking, hey, what's going on here? So we are not only working here for 200,000 people, we are working for much more people in the world. We have at least two very important aims. The one is to reduce carbon dioxide about 50% up to 2030. And the second one is to be climate neutral in 2050. And this sounds very far away, 2050. Well, it's 34 years from here. But if you think back, 34 years is 1982. And I can remember 1982 very good. You maybe not, but it's not so far away.
But you guys are all so willing. It looks like it's on the way.
Yeah, that's the nice fact. The people are willing, and they are together. We are on the way. It's not only a government project. It's a project from the people of this city, and I think the majority of the people likes it very much. Yeah.
Sustainability is about finding a way to continue having a high quality of life only within the limits of our planet. A lot of people think that sustainability is about giving things up, or it is about impacting the way that you live. But I would say that it's the opposite. I would say the only way that we can continue to have a high quality of life is to embrace sustainability.
When I first thought about going to the sustainability capital of Germany, I didn't know what to expect. What I discovered is a modern, vibrant place where climate-friendly living can be synonymous with the good life. And I saw no reason why this couldn't be replicated in any Irish town or city. While people in Freiburg and many European countries are actively reducing their carbon emissions in response to climate change, we in Ireland are increasing ours. This isn't just irresponsible. We also face billions of euro in EU fines as a result. Yet, there are now some signs of change. We've quadrupled our renewable energy output in the last 25 years, and we're starting to invest in next-generation energy technologies. We've legislated for higher standards of energy efficiency in our homes and public buildings. And public demand for action is growing every day. Many individuals, communities, and businesses are already demonstrating that low-carbon living is possible. But if we really want sustainability to be mainstream in Ireland and for all these seeds of change to take root, we need a serious long-term strategy with government and public backing. We need to realise that a prosperous, climate-friendly Ireland is a practical possibility. We now know we are the first generation to feel the effect of climate change and the last generation who can do something about it.